If you've ever sat alone at your own graduation hoping your parents might show up just for once to see you shine, and they didn't, then maybe you already know how this story begins. My name is Delilah Monroe. I'm 39 years old. I built Luminacore from scratch. No trust fund, no family loan, no last name boost. Just grit, 20-hour days, and more silent tears than I'd ever admit out loud. I was the first in my family to go to college. The first to earn a master's. The first to buy a home. The first to, well, a lot of things. But somehow I was never the first in their eyes. That was Nathan. Nathan, the golden child. The quarterback, the charming one. The one who barely scraped through college on scholarships I helped him fill out, but still got the loudest cheers from our parents. Even when he messed up, they called it growing pains. When I succeeded, they said I was lucky. Funny, huh? I was 22 when I got into Stanford for my MBA. I remember calling my mum, my voice shaking with excitement, thinking, maybe now they'll see me. You know what she said? Isn't that out west? That's far. No, we're proud of you. No, we'll help with tuition. Just concern about geography. I paid my way. Scholarships, freelance consulting, part-time jobs. I didn't complain. Not once. I thought, if I just keep showing up, if I stay the good daughter, maybe they'll come around. Spoiler, they didn't. There's a picture on my bookshelf I used to keep hidden. Stanford graduation day. I'm standing in my red robe, cap slightly crooked, holding my diploma and smiling like I hadn't just cried in a bathroom stall because my family texted me they'd be late. They arrived after the ceremony, missed my name being called, missed my walk, missed the standing ovation when I gave the valedictorian speech, and when they finally showed up, Mom handed me a bouquet from a gas station and said, "You'll have to send us a recording of the speech. Nathan had his semi-final today." Nathan, again. That was the first time I felt it deep in my chest, that shift from disappointment to detachment. Being invisible is one thing, being replaced by someone who doesn't even care is another. I'm not bitter. I've never wanted pity. But if you're reading this because you're searching through revenge stories hoping one might finally feel like yours, you're not alone. Because the truth is, I didn't set out to get back at them, I just couldn't take being erased anymore. 5 years ago, Nathan's small construction firm hit a wall, massive debt, lawsuits, unpaid taxes. I was already scaling Luminacore at that point. I had funding, traction, a real team. Dad called me, voice tight and shaky. "Can you help?" I did. I let them use my name for a temporary loan line to cover payroll and IRS liens. Stupid, right? I trusted them. No paperwork, no legal protection. Just a daughter trying to be seen. They said they'd clear it within the year. They never mentioned it again. Last Thanksgiving, they handed out embroidered napkins with everyone's name. Nathan got gold stitching, his wife, silver. I got a paper placeholder written in Sharpie, guest. And I still stayed. Still smiled through dinner. Still helped clean up. Still brought wine I knew they wouldn't thank me for. Because I kept thinking, they're just forgetful. They're not cruel. But cruelty doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just quietly leaves you out. One chair at a time, one celebration at a time, until you're standing at the edge of your own family, unsure where you even fit anymore. So when the wedding invitation came in that heavy cream envelope, no personal note, no "we'd love you to speak" or "Nathan's so excited to have his sister there," just a blank RSVP card tucked beside Tiffany's monogram, I knew I wasn't family. I was filler. And yet I still thought, maybe if I show up, just show up. That's the wildest part about being the forgotten child. You don't stop hoping, you just get quieter about it. But let me be clear, this isn't a story about revenge. This is a story about choosing not to be erased anymore. And what happens when the people who always saw you as an afterthought finally realize you were the backbone all along? Delilah agrees to go to her boyfriend Jalen's wedding. She doesn't expect anything. She just wants to prove to herself that she's not a runaway. But at the wedding, everything comes crashing down. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days, buried under coupons and a real estate flyer I never asked for. I'd almost thrown it out if it weren't for the gold embossed seal and the too familiar handwriting. Mr. and Mrs. Monroe cordially invite you to celebrate the marriage of their beloved son, Nathan Monroe. Beloved, I muttered. Of course. There was no note. No, we hope you'll be there. No, it would mean the world to Nathan. Just a generic invitation with a blank RSVP line and a pastel insert that read garden formal attire required. I stared at it a long while, long enough to feel the weight of all the years packed into that one thick, overpriced envelope. I set it down and walked away. But it followed me, in every quiet moment, while I stirred coffee, answered emails, scanned quarterly forecasts for Luminacor's next funding phase. It was there, like an old bruise you forget until something bumps against it just hard enough to hurt. That evening, Jalen called, FaceTime. I hesitated for a second, then answered. His screen lit up with his usual soft grin. You look tense. Work? I held the invitation up. Guess who's getting married? He blinked. Seriously? Are you going? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure if I was more insulted by the lack of effort or embarrassed that deep down I still wanted to be asked like I mattered. He tilted his head. If you go, I'll go with you. Just say the word. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach. I might need backup. Jalen nodded. You won't need it, but I'll be there anyway. The next morning, I stood over the RSVP card for longer than I should have. Then, almost defiantly, I checked the box, attending with guest. I sealed the envelope and dropped it into the mail slot before I could change my mind. Later that week, a text pinged my phone. Nathan, thanks for coming, sis. Appreciate it. That was it. No, can't wait to see you. No, you'll be sitting with the family. Just a bare minimum acknowledgement that I existed. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't reply. Because that text wasn't for me, it was for his conscience. The wedding day arrived fast. The venue was in Vermont at some sprawling estate Tiffany's family owned. Jalen and I pulled up in my car, sleek, silent, paid for in full with my money. Not my parents', not Nathan's, mine. I stepped out in a navy dress, structured, elegant. Jalen adjusted his cufflinks beside me. They went all out, he muttered, eyeing the fountains and rose-covered archways. Bradford standard, I said, with a half smile. But inside, my stomach was folding in on itself, because no matter how expensive the dress or polished the posture, there's nothing that prepares you for walking into a room full of people who've spent a lifetime making you feel like a mistake. The moment I saw my mother's face, I knew she hadn't expected me to come. She masked it with a quick smile and dry cheek kiss. You look sharp, she said, eyeing my dress like it was a product sample she didn't ask for. And who's this? Jalen, he said, extending a warm hand. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Monroe. Her smile tightened. Likewise. She turned to me and hooked her arm through mine. Come, your father's speaking with the Bradfords. You should say hello. Like I was an assistant, not a daughter. Richard Bradford was mid-conversation with my father when I approached. He straightened the moment he saw me. So you're the brilliant woman behind Luminacor. That caught me off guard. Thank you. We're proud of the work, I replied. He nodded. Our efficiency is already improving. Very excited to see what comes next. Before I could respond, my mother leaned in and laughed a little too loudly. Oh, Delilah's always been our little computer genius. She's great with gadgets. I blinked. Gadgets. She said it like I fixed iPads in a mall kiosk. Then she added, but Nathan's the one really driving the family legacy. He's so hands-on. Richard's brow furrowed. Nathan never mentioned his sister ran Luminacor. I didn't even get to answer. Nathan showed up behind me, all charm and shrugs. Didn't seem relevant, he said, wrapping an arm around me like it wasn't the first hug in 2 years. She keeps busy with her tech stuff. Tech stuff. I know I should have been used to it by now, but in that moment, it felt like the slow scrape of a knife across a scar. If you've ever stood in a room full of people and felt completely invisible, like the version of you they acknowledge is a half-written footnote. Tell me I'm not the only one. Tell me if you've been there, watching people praise your success as luck, while lifting up others who've done a fraction as much. Because I swear there's a different kind of pain when your own family becomes the ones who rewrite your story without your consent. By the time Tiffany arrived, gliding across the lawn in a blush pink gown, all sparkle and rehearsed sweetness, I was already somewhere else mentally. "Delilah, you made it!" she said, kissing the air beside both my cheeks. Her eyes flicked to my dress. Navy, so reliable. I smiled without showing teeth. "You look expensive." Her expression didn't flinch. "Come find your table soon. We had to get creative." That word creative would hit different later. But for now, I stood there in the middle of a $1,000 garden party, wondering how much louder I'd have to succeed before my own family would look me in the eye and see me as enough. Have you ever been erased so subtly it almost felt polite? If this chapter hit something raw, say it. Just say it. I'll be reading. Ready for chapter 3? Want me to continue? It started with the clipboard. The wedding planner, a thin woman in a soft lavender jumpsuit and earpiece, smiled the way people do when they're trying to mask dread with charm. She scanned her list, pen poised mid-air. Name? Delilah Monroe, +1. She hesitated, just a breath, but I caught it. You know that pause? The kind that says, uh-oh, where do I stick this one? Her eyes flicked back to the page, then to me, then back again. Finally, she smiled too brightly. Oh yes, table O. Table O. That's not a letter. That's an afterthought. I opened my mouth, but before I could say a word, she was already waving to one of the catering assistants in the back. "Carlos, could you escort Ms. Monroe and her guest to their table?" He nodded quickly and gestured for us to follow. I glanced at Jalen. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. I saw it in his eyes, though. He knew. He knew this wasn't just a mix-up. It was intentional. We didn't walk toward the reception tent, the one with chandeliers strung like constellations and pastel centerpieces that probably cost more than my first apartment. No, we walked in the opposite direction, past the loading ramp, past the open prep kitchen, past the walk-in cooler buzzing behind a utility door. The air changed. Less floral, more fryer oil. Carlos stopped in front of a door, hesitated like he didn't want to be the one to open it, then finally pushed it wide. There it was. A folding table, wobbly, barely dressed in a wrinkled white cloth. 2 metal chairs, no centerpiece, no place cards, just 2 plastic cups and a stack of bus tubs beside it. A literal seat by the garbage. I stared. I blinked. Surely this wasn't real. Surely this was a mistake, right? Carlos shifted. "I'm really sorry, there were some last-minute changes. The bride insisted." Behind me, Jalen whispered, "This is completely unacceptable." I nodded once, stiff. But before I could speak, a familiar voice drifted into the room. Well, well, everything all right in here?" Tiffany. Standing in the doorway, champagne flute in hand, gown shimmering under the fluorescent lights like she was walking onto a stage. She was already smiling, wide, warm, fake. I didn't move. Jalen stepped forward. "There's been a mistake. Delilah's the groom's sister." Tiffany's smile didn't budge. "We had to prioritize business guests, close family friends. You understand?" I didn't answer, because in that moment, I saw over her shoulder my brother, Nathan. He was standing at the edge of the tent looking straight at us, and he did nothing, just sipped his drink, didn't flinch, didn't frown, didn't speak. I felt something crack, like glass held too tight in a shaking hand. I turned back to Tiffany, voice low, almost mechanical. "I'm your husband's sister." She blinked. "Exactly, extended family now." And just like that, I was out of the family, out of the narrative. Jalen stepped forward again, protective, ready to speak. I stopped him with a hand on his chest. "Not here," I whispered. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, but my jaw was locked. "I need a minute." I walked out, fast, focused. My heels clacked on the tile like gunfire. I found the nearest single-stall guest restroom and locked the door. I sat down on the closed toilet lid and pressed my palms into my eyes. But the tears came anyway. Not just from today, from every damn time before. From the birthday they forgot when I turned 16. From the graduation speech they missed because Nathan had a brunch. From the company loan they took out in my name and never paid back, or even acknowledged. From every smile they gave him and every silence they gave me. I looked up at the mirror, mascara bleeding, shoulders shaking, but behind it all there she was, me, Delilah, still here, still breathing, and something cold, clean and final settled in my chest. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Gregory, my COO, hit call. He picked up on the second ring. "Vanessa, everything okay? I thought you had the day off for—" "Gregory," I interrupted, voice clear, steady. "Effective immediately, cancel the Bradford contract, flag it, notify legal." A pause. "Are you sure?" I stared at my reflection. I've never been more sure. And I hung up. When I stepped out of that bathroom, I wasn't trembling anymore. I wasn't hoping anymore. That version of me, the one who kept waiting for their love, their approval, their apology, she stayed behind in that mirror. What walked back into that wedding was someone new. If you've ever been humiliated so calmly, so surgically, that it felt almost rehearsed, you're not crazy. You were just never part of their main story. And maybe it's time you start writing your own. I stepped back into the hallway, phone still warm in my hand. The hum of the reception floated through the corridor like a distant party I was never really invited to. Jazz music, champagne glasses clinking, polite laughter echoing off marble. I smoothed my dress, fixed my hair, blotted my face with a tissue until my eyes looked like I hadn't been crying in a bathroom stall over family politics. Then I walked. Not like someone trying to sneak back in, not like someone hoping to blend. I walked like every footstep mattered. Because this time, it did. The tent was still buzzing when I entered. Soft pink lighting, gold-rimmed plates, a string quartet tucked into the corner like wallpaper. It was a scene from a bridal magazine. Too perfect, too curated, too fake. I didn't head for my table. I didn't look for Tiffany or even Nathan. I walked straight toward the head table, right into the centre of it all, where my parents were seated with champagne and smugness, where Richard Bradford was sipping wine, flanked by executives and family friends, where the power of the night supposedly lived, not anymore. I stepped between tables, murmurs followed, faces turned. A hush rippled like a subtle wave, that shift in the air before something irreversible happens. Richard noticed me first. His eyes narrowed, confused. Nathan looked up next. His champagne flute was halfway to his mouth. Then Tiffany. Her expression faltered, one smile twitch away from cracking. I stopped 2 steps from the head table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I lifted my phone, hit speaker, and said one sentence. "Gregory, it's Delilah. Effective immediately. Terminate the Bradford contract and send the flagged loan file to SEC and IRS." The reaction was instant. A wine glass clinked too hard. A woman at the next table gasped. My father stiffened. "Delilah," Richard said, voice low, "let's not do this here." "Oh," I replied calmly, "we're definitely doing this here." Nathan stood up, pale. "Come on, Dee, we can talk later, all right? This isn't the place." I looked at him, dead in the eye. "You've had years to talk, Nathan. You chose silence. You watched them humiliate me. You used my name to get a $1.7 million business loan 5 years ago when your company was drowning. And when it was paid back, you thanked them. You never even acknowledged me." My mother stood up then, one hand out like she might somehow spin this back under control. "Delilah, that was a family decision." I cut her off. "No, that was fraud. You used my credit, my business history, and my signature. And you never even said thank you. You just kept pretending I was someone you tolerated out of politeness. A guest in my own bloodline." People were staring now, phones out, guests whispering, glancing at Tiffany and Richard and back at me. And then it happened. Two men stood up from separate tables, both from competing investment firms I'd seen on the contract rounds. Thomas Harrington, Gerald Winters. Thomas approached slowly, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Monroe," he said quietly, "if you have a moment after this, we'd like to speak with you about Luminacore." Behind me I felt the temperature shift, not the weather, the power. Tiffany tried to speak. I didn't even hear what she said. The words evaporated before they reached me. I turned my back to them all and walked. Outside, the sky had turned that soft shade of wedding dusk, where it's still warm enough to sting, but fading fast. Jalen was already by the valet, leaning on the hood of our car like he'd been waiting for the exact moment. He looked at me, and he grinned, slow and sharp, like a flame catching dry paper. Damn, that was biblical. I didn't speak, didn't need to. He opened the door for me like it was nothing, like I hadn't just dropped a $30 million bomb in a tent full of people who once acted like I didn't exist. And as I slid into the seat, silence folded around me. Not empty, but clean, like the quiet after a storm finally clears. Monday morning, my inbox looked like a war zone. Subject lines in all caps. Legal teams demanding explanations. My father had left 3 voicemails. My mother 5. Nathan, 1 text. "You destroyed everything." I stared at it for a full minute and then laughed. Quiet, sharp, not bitter, just done. Jalen walked into the office, holding 2 coffees. He looked at me, caught the expression on my face, and said, "No, Delilah, you didn't destroy anything." He placed the cup on my desk. "You just stopped letting them write the ending." If you've ever been told this isn't the place when standing up for yourself, if they shamed you in private and demanded your silence in public, then you already know. Sometimes the real power isn't in yelling. It's in speaking just loud enough that they can't ignore you anymore. The thing about burning bridges, people only panic once they realize they can't walk back over them. By the time I walked into my office Monday morning, my inbox had exploded. The subject lines read like fire alarms. Urgent, Bradford legal escalation. RE, immediate contract, cancellation, damage control. Please respond ASAP. There were 23 voicemails between my personal and business phones. 4 from my mother, 3 from my father, 2 from Nathan, 1 from a number I didn't recognize, but I didn't need to. The desperation in the subject line said enough. I took a long sip of my coffee and didn't answer a single one. Gregory popped his head into my office doorway, holding a legal file in one hand and his phone in the other. "They're lighting up every channel short of carrier pigeons," he said, half joking. "Let them," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" I nodded. "They didn't care when they used my name to bail themselves out. Why should I care now?" He smiled, small and satisfied. "Got it. Formal termination letters ready. Want me to send it?" "Hit send." He tapped his phone and walked out. 2 hours later, I got an email from Thomas Harrington at Coastal Development. "Delilah, what you did at that wedding took guts. We're interested in talking partnership if you're open to it." Then another one came in from Gerald Winters at Apex. "Your team's work on the Nexus module impressed us. If Bradford isn't smart enough to recognize that, we are." The tide was turning, and fast, not because I made noise, but because I stopped whispering. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in years. Clara Monroe, my mum's older sister. Aunt Clara. I almost didn't pick up. Almost. But something made me swipe right. Her voice came through the line, low and steady, older now, a little tired, but calm. "Delilah, I heard what happened." I braced myself. For a lecture, for a scolding, for the usual, but she didn't scold. She sighed. "I waited 30 years for someone in this family to finally say no. To stop pretending silence is loyalty. I'm proud of you." My throat tightened. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath. "You weren't wrong, sweetheart," she added. They were. For a long time. I wanted to respond, but the words caught in my chest. So I let the silence do the talking. That evening I scrolled through the rest of my emails. Buried between vendor updates and funding projections, I found a message from my father. Subject, "You've humiliated this family. I hope it was worth it." Underneath it, another from my mother. "Call us. You don't understand what you've done." And below that, one more from Nathan. "You destroyed my future. I'm being pushed out of the Bradford project. Tiffany's furious. I don't even know where to start." I stared at it for a while. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to say something, anything, but what do you say to people who only show up when they've lost something? The answer came, not in words, but in another inbox notification. New sender, no subject line, just an email address, dianadesign@gmail.com. I clicked it. Delilah. I heard, I watched, and I cried. "I'm your cousin Diana. We've never really met, not properly. I grew up being told you were the difficult one, that you were selfish. But watching what you did, I saw someone survive a lifetime of being pushed aside with grace I don't think I'd have had. You didn't destroy anything. You exposed it. I'm proud of you. And I hope we meet someday. You're not alone." I stared at the screen, then read it again, slower. All my life I thought I was the only one carrying the shame, the weight, the silence. Turns out they'd just taught us all to suffer quietly, separately, until someone stood up. Jalen came home that night with takeout and a bottle of wine. He saw me sitting at the kitchen counter, laptop open, emails still unread. He didn't ask, just set the food down, poured the wine, and slid a glass in front of me. "You okay?" he asked. I looked up at him, then down at my phone. Nathan had sent one final text. "Lunch? Just you and me. Please. I want to talk." I didn't respond. Not yet. If you've ever been blamed for the fallout after standing up for yourself, if they acted like you lit the fire while ignoring the years they spent piling dry kindling around you, then you know the explosion isn't your fault. You just stopped keeping the match hidden. The lunch spot Nathan picked was a small Italian restaurant tucked on the corner of Beacon Street. Dark wood, amber lighting, the kind of place you choose when you want privacy without looking like you're hiding. I arrived 10 minutes early. I did that on purpose. Not because I was eager, because I wanted to choose the seat that let me face the door. Nathan showed up 5 minutes later. He looked smaller, not in stature, in presence. His shoulders were hunched, like he'd been carrying something heavier than he expected. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied, folding my hands on the table. He sat down, looked at the untouched glass of water, then at me, then back down again. For a while we just sat, until finally he spoke. "I don't know where to start," I nodded. "Try honesty, that's new for you." He let out a bitter laugh, but there wasn't any defense in it, just deflation. "I was jealous," he admitted. "Always have been." That caught me off guard. "Since high school. You were smart. You never needed help. You made it look easy, and every time I looked at you, I felt like I was already losing." I let the silence stretch. He kept talking. "So instead of trying to catch up, I made you small. In front of Mom. In front of everyone, because if they thought less of you, maybe they'd stop comparing us." He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes glassy. "I knew about the kitchen seat. I approved it." I blinked. He looked straight at me, like saying it was burning through his throat. I told them, "It'd keep things less awkward if you were tucked away. You'd understand. You always understood." I didn't speak. I wanted to yell, to cry, to throw the bread plate against the wall. But I didn't, because something deeper than rage settled in me, clarity. "I'm not carrying that anymore," I said finally. Nathan looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm done making room for your guilt, for Mom and Dad's silence, for this idea that I'm supposed to be the good one just because I never burned anything down." He swallowed hard. "Is there any way to fix it?" I shook my head slowly. "Not with me," I said. "Maybe with yourself. But not with me." We finished the meal in silence. And when we stood to leave, I looked him in the eye one last time. "You don't get to make me invisible and then ask me to help you feel seen." He nodded, barely. I turned, walked out. The air outside was cool, brisk, honest. Jalen was parked across the street. He rolled down the window when he saw me. "You okay?" he asked. "I think I'm finally okay," I said, sliding into the passenger seat. We drove without music for a while, quiet but not empty. That night back at my apartment, I lit a candle. I wasn't the candles and wine type usually, but something about that soft light felt like permission to exhale. I scrolled through my inbox. Another email from Aunt Clara. "Next time, dinner's on me." A calendar invite from Diana, the cousin I'd never known. Paint and wine night, girls only. And finally, a text from Nathan. "Thank you for being honest. I'm working on it." I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, I picked up my phone and opened a blank note. At the top, I typed, "Things I deserve without earning them first. Respect. Peace. Space. Real family, even if I build it myself. A seat at the damn table. To everyone watching, have you ever fought to be seen for who you truly are, rather than who others thought you should be? Drop a in the comments if you've rewritten your own narrative. Share your story. Let's remind each other that some medals are invisible, but they're earned all the same. And if this chapter resonated, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because your story deserves to exist just as you are. And to anyone who's ever been seated in the kitchen, you were never the problem. They just couldn't handle your light.